The Bangles, Walk Like an Egyptian. My favorite song. How about you? Makes me want to do that thing. No? Can you do that? I can do it on the top. I just can't get the footing on it. So let's do a little walking like an Egyptian tonight. I got an article from Ancient Origins. I don't know if anybody but me subscribes to Ancient Origins notices, but there's always something good in there. And I'll give you a link right now if you're interested in going out there. Let's see, there we go. You can get hooked up with them if you want. They send you a weekly email with links in it to various different things that they research. They're not very deep, but they give you a good level understanding of some of these topics. A lot of biblical topics, a lot of Egypt topics. Here's the article from this week. I think it's this week, maybe not. Has the biblical Moses been identified in secular Egyptian records? Huh. How do I get over there? There we go. We'll take a look at this and then we'll turn it over to you. There's Moses with his staff and the people walking right across the water as they part. Moses was a prophet and a leader according to Abrahamic religions, but many scholars view him as a legendary figure rather than a real historical person. They do concede that a Moses-like figure could have existed in history, so it is possible to track this person down through historic records. Is it? It is the view of this writer that this is very possible, and that in fact, the Moses figure can be traced as that of the primary confidant of none other than Egyptian pharaoh Hatshepsut. The trail begins with the Exodus. I don't think that we have previously linked Moses with Hatshepsut yet. Maybe we have. What's the date of the Exodus? To find Moses in the Egyptian records, the first requirement is to fix the date of the Exodus of the Hebrews from Egypt. If we use the Bible as our primary source, we know that this occurred during the New Kingdom period of Egypt, when the powerful Egyptian families of the south reasserted themselves and drove out the Hyksos invaders, who had been entrenched in the power centers of northern Egypt for over 100 years. That would be 14th and 13th centuries BC. The Hyksos stay in Egypt is known in history as the Second Intermediate Period. However, there's a difference of opinion among biblical scholars as to when, during the New Kingdom, the Exodus occurred. So, can we find anything to help us pin it down? If one accepts the biblical dating of Solomon's time, we know that he started building his famous temple in 960 BC. And the text of 1 Kings 6 verse 1 states that this was 480 years since the Exodus. Thus, we can fix the date for the Exodus of 1440 BC when Moses was 80 years old. This would mean that he was born around 1520 and is an adult in the court between 1500 and 1480 BC. I don't know if I would agree with those dates or not. I think Moses came later than that. I think he came about somewhere in the 13th, or I should say 12th or 11th century BC. And everybody has a different opinion on this. This writer says 1500, and that he was 80 years old. 1500 is the time of the pharaoh queen Hatshepsut, and she had a close confidant described by the well-known Egyptologist Joyce Tilsley in her book on Hatshepsut as the greatest of the great. The father of Hatshepsut was Thutmose I. Am I not being heard? I just got a text from somebody.
I can hear you fine.
Okay, good. And his name means son of Thoth, the god of wisdom, Moshe, meaning son or child. This is the common use of the word Moshe, as in Ra-Meses, son of the god Ra, etc. What does a Ra mean in Hebrew? It's a pretty easy one.
Evil.
That's right, evil. The biblical text tells us that it was Pharaoh's daughter who named Moses. Exodus 2, verse 10 says that she called him Moses because she said, I drew him out of the water. And this illustration, oh, happy Egypt, happy, happy. Everybody's happy and living in luxury. Hatshepsut, of course, is white as a sheet here, and all the slaves are dark. But we will not find a Prince Moses in the court in Egypt because another Bible reference, Hebrews 11:24, states that Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. Instead, we find that the close confidant of the queen is a man called Senenmut. This appears to be a unique name, and one of its meanings is mother's brother. Hatshepsut was born in the early 1530s, so they were close in age, so such a name makes sense. I'm not sure about these biblical dates, especially going to Hebrews and that date of 480 years. I have a tendency to think that these are somewhat symbolic, but what do I know? If Hatshepsut is the woman who rescued and adopted Moses, what would make a woman of such high standing adopt a slave child? After her mother, Hatshepsut was the highest woman in the land, and such a woman would not consider saving the life of a slave child, let alone adopt him as her son. But when we look at the past, it's hard for us to remember that the people we are observing are just like us. They have thoughts and feelings like us. And Hatshepsut, at the time she found the abandoned baby in the basket, was a little girl with the instincts to protect the helpless that we see so often in children. The text of Exodus 2:6 says, she saw the child, he was crying, and she took pity upon him. And there they are. Hatshepsut knew that he was a Hebrew child, as the rest of the verse tells us, but she was too young to look ahead and understand the enormity of her action. Almost immediately, she must have formed an attachment to him. And as he grew, the attachment grew, and her loyalty to him would alter the course of her life. So what do we know about her? We know that Hatshepsut married, oh, that's hard to pronounce, Hatshepsut married her brother, Thutmose II, Thutmose, becoming his great royal wife as his principal queen. Becoming his great principal queen. She bears him 2 daughters, but no sons, and following his death, after a reign of only 13 years, his son by a harem woman is made the pharaoh, becoming Thutmose III. This new pharaoh is an infant, and Hatshepsut is made regent. She is effectively the ruler of the land, holding all the power already, and so it seems odd to Egyptologists that after just 2 years she makes herself pharaoh. Did she have ambitions to put her adopted son on the throne? This she could do if she were pharaoh, but not if she were only regent. She reigns as the senior pharaoh, jointly with Thutmose III, for 22 successive years until her death. Does anybody have any comments so far? Judgments? Critical thoughts?
Little tiny bit, but this is good about Hatshepsut. This follows along with some of the stuff that I've already read about how she attained the pharaohship, if you want to call it that, and led the country through her stepson. I disagree a little bit with the dating of Moshe, but that's, it's all up for grabs, man. There's no hard science. Thank you.
Well, if Joseph was connected with Akhenaten, and we're talking 1350 or so BC, that would put Moses before Joseph.
Right.
Yeah.
That doesn't follow the patriarch's history.
What is truth? She rules the country well. She sets up trading expeditions with the land south of Egypt. That must be Cush. And she keeps a firm grip on Nubia, Egypt's southern neighbor from which vast resources are acquired. Nubia and Cush, they're the same thing. Including gold, cattle, slaves, and soldiers. She carries out extensive building works both in Waset, the ancient name for Luxor, and around the country. That would explain a little bit why the book of Yashar has Moses being the king of Cush for 30 years. A comely queen, life-size statue of Hatshepsut, the Nemes headcloth, and the Shendit kilt, which are both traditional for an Egyptian king. She's wearing these. The statue is more feminine, given the body structure. And sure enough, that does not look like a man, especially in the area of the face and chest.
Do you think perhaps that this helped later Akhenaten? Because this would be the first time that a woman would have ever been considered as ruler, or even put on that headdress and put in that position. Do you think that helped him with his reign and his softening of the image of Pharaoh?
Well, sure. There were other women that ruled, but not as Pharaoh. They ruled from behind the scenes, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right. This is the first one that had been memorialized. Yeah. Very significant.
She extends the temple of Amun in Waset, erecting 4 huge obelisks in his honor, 2 of which are still there, one still standing. It bears engravings as clear as they were when it was erected 3,500 years ago, reading, "Raised for the glory of my father Amun, that I may be given life." What exactly is the relationship between Amun and the Aten? Anybody know? As I said in these other words that they defaced Amun. Isn't Amun the sun as well? And isn't there a Hebrew word that sounds a lot like Amun?
You might be thinking about Omain.
I'm thinking about that, sure. Amen. There's a Greek word too.
Main, of course, but that's just a month, the day, the Greek word for month, right?
Well, there's, let's see, kind of slipped my mind. The word for faith, enuma,
Emunah?
emunah.
Yeah, in Hebrew, yes.
Is that Hebrew?
Yeah. Of course,
Okay.
I think is it pistis in Greek?
Pistis, right.
The
Peace.
no pistis, no relation.
Those eyes are, they sound like long E's.
Okay.
She builds a magnificent mortuary temple for herself where the gods are honored, known as the Temple of Der El Bahri, which still stands and is visited by thousands of tourists every year. Hatshepsut ruled her country well and was buried honorably, probably with her father Thutmose first, in tomb KV20, a tomb she had built for a double burial. After the death of his stepmother, Thutmose III continued his long reign of over 50 years, spending much of that time campaigning in the Levant, defeating the power of the Hittites to the northwest and the Mitanni to the northeast, and bringing the wealthy city-states of Canaan firmly under Egyptian control. Now, the Levant, isn't that the Israel Peninsula? I think Mitanni is Syria. Please correct me if I'm wrong. He's known as the Napoleon of Egypt for his success as a military man. You know a little about Napoleon, the real Napoleon when he was in Egypt? That's a very interesting story. If you ever get a chance, Napoleon was soundly defeated in Egypt. The battle was quite an interesting defeat. I'm looking for the next text here. The fallen obelisk of Hatshepsut. Don't you wonder how many people got killed when they put those things up? And the image, it says, has been deliberately chipped away and removed. They didn't like her either. Perhaps it would be appropriate to do that with some of our presidents. Removing all record of Hatshepsut's name was intended by the Egyptians as the ultimate punishment, known as damnatio memoriae. All records of a person removed from history as if they had never lived resulted in the death of their soul for eternity. This effectively removed Hatshepsut from Egyptian history until all memory of her and why she had been so hated was lost. Can you name 2 or 3 Roman emperors that went through the damnatio memoriae? I bet you can guess at least one. Caracalla, Nero, and Domitian are the 3 I can think of. She was forgotten for over 1,000 years until vague references to her were found by the priest Manetho in 300 BC, when he was asked by the Greeks in power at that time to search out and list the pharaohs of Egyptian history. Ooh. At 300 BC is a little bit familiar to us. Isn't that pretty near the date of the letter of Aristion?
Yes, is that correct? Fact checking?
I'm just guessing, and I think so.
Wow.
250, 300. I wonder if it's the same king. I think that was Ptolemy, Philadelphia. I'm not
I
sure.
think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right.
He found references to a female pharaoh called Amensis, who was identified by later Egyptologists as Hatshepsut and recorded her as the fifth pharaoh of the New Kingdom dynasty, but nothing more was known of her. Look how we're starting to be able to work in these texts.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah. Identifying dates, identifying things that were happening in the rest of the world at about the same time. It was thought that Hatshepsut's mummy had been lost, but it has been recently identified lying abandoned in the tomb of her royal nurse Sitra, tomb KV60. Again, if you're interested in these tombs, I found the Egyptian report on those tombs from 1906, which I could dig up. That's a pretty interesting document, too. Everything's interesting.
Everything historical is interesting, but yes, if you can post that in the Facebook group, that'd be cool.
Please do remind me.
Sí, da.
It was identified by a tooth fragment known to belong to Hatshepsut, and the mummy appeared to have been left without ceremony, perhaps in haste to hide it from those who would have destroyed it. The Egyptians believed that the preservation of the body was essential to survival in the afterlife, hence the lengths they went to preserve them. It was the ultimate punishment to destroy a person's body. A lot of believers think that today as well. They get embalmed when they die. Uh-oh. Okay. This action against Hatshepsut and Senenmut's memory occurs either late in the reign of Thutmose III, when his son Amenhotep II was sharing the throne, or after Thutmose's death, when Amenhotep II was reigning alone. It seems, therefore, to be Amenhotep II who is responsible for this destruction, and was that not Akhenaten's grandfather that we looked at last week? Oh, looky here. Amenhotep II. Anybody know about this cowl and the asp?
That's called I think a uraeus, the insignia. And I forget exactly what the headdress is, but it's supposed to represent, I believe, the united Upper and Lower Egypt.
This looks like the cowl of, say, a cobra or an adder, don't you think?
Insignia of either the Upper or Lower Egypt. Was it?
Wow.
I thought that was a shoot. No, that was Scorpion King.
When I was 12 years old, I was walking through the forest in Michigan, and I came upon a huge puff adder. Didn't know what it was at that time, but the thing came up and let that cowl out and started hissing. And I thought, what's a cobra doing in Michigan? I got to get out of here. That was quite a surprise and very scary as well. He would be at the correct time to see the return of Moses demanding the release of the Hebrew slaves. The story of the Exodus describes great hardship for Egypt, and one can understand Amenhotep's fury against both Hatshepsut and Senenmut and wishing to destroy their memory. Being wiped out of history for the Egyptians was tantamount to eternal damnation. Excuse me. Reading this stuff, James Breasted comes up an awful lot. I think it was an Egyptologist of the late 1800s. During those 1800s, Wealthy gentlemen such as James Breasted went to Egypt specifically with the hope of finding evidence to prove the biblical record. By the way, his literature is in the public domain. If you really want to get into this stuff from the perspective of the 19th century, these men effectively established the science of Egyptology. But at the same time, the statues of Hatshepsut still lay buried in the pit where they were thrown 30 years after her death. They remained there undiscovered until found by Herbert Winlock, an American Egyptologist employed by the Metropolitan Museum of Art in Boston, United States in 1927, by which time the world at large was no longer interested in trying to prove the Bible. That was right in the middle of the modernist period, where churches kind of deserted biblical history and went to the social gospel. That history really wasn't important. What was important was to do good works, and that faith was not that important, but rather that one followed the Messiah in the good things that he did, the Messiah as simply a great teacher or philosopher. But not only was a hoard of statues of Hatshepsut discovered just east of the first court of her mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahri, another pit was found containing over 20 hard stone statues of Senenmut, a huge number for a non-royal. In fact, to date, 26 hard stone statues of Senenmut have been identified, which causes Egyptologists to wonder what was it about this man that he was given such status. Is this one here? I hope so. Something scraped out right there. Kneeling statue of Senenmut, chief steward. What would you do if you had one of these stone statues of Senenmut? What would you do with it? Sell it immediately. I wouldn't want to put it in my study or anything like that. The first thing to confront us when looking at the records of Senenmut are the many beautiful statues of him as a young lad holding Hatshepsut's elder daughter, the Princess Neferure. She is there wrapped in his cloak as a baby as he sits on the ground. Does this one have that? Looks like he's holding an air mattress. But look down here. What is that? That looks like a hand. That looks like a viper. Do you think this could be the coils of a snake? A python? That's what it looks like.
Yeah, it looks like it very well could be.
Wow, yes. He's holding her in his arms. Maybe I did this already. The way a woman would hold a child. In some examples, he sits on a chair holding her on his lap. Some are of him standing holding Neferure as a toddler, but altogether they show a level of intimacy between the two of them as we would have in photos taken of our children together. And didn't we point out earlier that this was a new trend in Egypt, these intimate representations?
Yes, sir.
Uh-huh. Well, here's one right here. A little child so meek and mild. He is said to be the tutor of Neferure, but statues of a royal child being held like this had never been made before this date. Look, we're way ahead of it. We're way ahead. And this is breaking protocol because a non-royal is not allowed to touch a royal child in this way. We know that Senenmut is not royal because he names his parents in one of his tombs and they have no titles at all, showing that they are of humble origin. But the extraordinary thing about Senenmut is that he is treated as a royal. He has two beautiful tombs built for himself. One, TT 353, has the oldest known star chart, a work of great expertise, on the ceiling. And this tomb is actually within the sacred precinct of Hatshepsut's mortuary temple. This is a sacred space, and to have Senenmut's tomb in such a place, sacred in itself, but also the personal space of the pharaoh, shows a degree of closeness between them that is shocking, unless there's an explanation for it. So, all right, somebody goes out to the Isle of Pandateria with nothing but a calendar. Did anybody get this riddle I put up today? Plenty of water on Pandateria, but there's nothing to eat. What does this person use to nourish himself? Nothing but a calendar. Well, dates, of course, and sundaes for dessert. That looks like it's in pretty good shape. Excuse me. The other tomb, TT 71, has decorations described by the Egyptologist Peter Dorman in the book Hatshepsut, From Queen to Pharaoh, page 131, as being clearly done by artists from the royal ateliers. Dorman also dismisses the suggestion that Senenmut may have been Hatshepsut's lover. In this tomb, 71, a sarcophagus belonging to Senenmut was found. It's made of quartzite, a material only allowed to be used by the royals. We know that Moses neither dies nor is buried in Egypt, and Senenmut is not buried in either of his tombs, but disappears from Egyptian records. Besides the statues of Senenmut holding the infant princess, there are many statues made of him making offerings to the gods. These statues were made to stand in the presence of the gods, and again, it is not permitted for a non-royal to enter the presence of the gods. Having your statue there was the equivalent of you being there in person. And of course, that's perhaps one of the reasons that worship at that time, such as it was, did not include non-royal people, only the royals and the priests. Let's see what chat has to say. Cool. Yeah, governor got one, Nero. Here again, he was treated as a royal. And all these statues are of a very young man, so it must be Hatshepsut who ordered these statues to be made. To be in the presence of the gods was a very favored position because you would receive the continual blessing of the gods. Perhaps like the standing man You'll always have a man standing before me. We also find a number of reliefs carved in the most sacred space of all, in the Deir el-Bahri temple, in the sanctuary of Amun itself. One is even carved in the back wall of the sanctuary, where the ceremonial boat that carried the idol of Amun was placed overnight before its return journey to Waset. For the images of a common citizen to be placed in such a sacred space breaks every rule in the book. But Hatshepsut must have done this, and done it because Senenmut was the son she had adopted, and she was ambitious for him to rise high in Egypt. So are they saying that Senenmut and Moses are the same?
Seems like it.
That seems to be what's happening here. During the course of his years at the court of Hatshepsut, Senenmut is acknowledged by experts in Egyptology to have held many of the highest titles in the land, showing that he was truly the greatest of the great in Hatshepsut's court. Oh, let's get on with it here. What's the bottom line? Senenmut's high standing in the court during the reign of Hatshepsut, coupled with him being wiped from the Egyptian historical narrative, and the correlation between the biblical and Egyptian dating would suggest that, therefore, that he was the person we know from the Bible as Moses. Oh, Allison, again, you're way ahead, way ahead. Go to the front of the class. Having discovered the story of Hatshepsut and Senenmut, I decided to present it as a historical novel. It was published in October 2018 by Mirador. It's called The King and Her Children, and is available from Waterstones and Amazon. There's a couple novels on Akhenaten that are really good. I wish I could tell you their names right now. I went to the public library, about 10 years ago and took a couple out. I have to find out what those were again, because I think if you read a good historical novel, you find yourself in the midst of the action. And perhaps if it's a good historical novel, if it's accurate, you learn a lot too. So there's a YouTube here as well. I'm going to put the link up. Copy. History summarized, Hatshepsut. Yes, let me put this down for the sake of the notes. Come on. Okay, there it is. And the author, A.R. Duckworth. Any good references? No references. Now, what do you think of this little article? Anyone care to comment? The people on here look like they're all stone statues.
No. I think it's interesting, but once again, we're fitting biblical figures into a historical framework, and there's no way to say yes or no. If you go looking for a place where this historical framework is, where you can fit a biblical figure, you can find anything.
Yeah.
It depends on your agenda and your frame of reference. I like some of the details this person has brought out. They're very interesting, and they may further work into what we are trying to build here, which is to look at the whole palette of information out there to find the most likely truth from what we can do. And it's really cool. I hadn't seen this. I enjoyed it. Thank you. It was very good.
On ancient origins, there is a plethora of articles such as this on Moses, Joseph, Amenhotep, Akhenaten, a lot of articles. They have a search engine on there, and you can put whatever you want in there, and these articles would just start flowing, and then you start reading one of them, and in the course, several times, there's a blank space where they have like 3 or 4 more links to information that they have online there that is similar or has something to do with that. I really like it, and it's free as well.
Does that site work very well on a PC? Because on a phone, it keeps getting blown up with trash. Does it work better on a computer?
Yes, there are ads like crazy on it, but you can pay a premium if you like it and get rid of the ads, and also you'll have access to all kinds of ebooks and videos and live seminars.
Nice.
From pretty famous people. They have like a seminar every week or 10 days. I'm not signed up as a premium member, but you will get every week an email with pictures in it and the topics of the different things they have for that week. And so that's one thing you can do. You can click on those links and go out there. I have not used one of these advertisement killers yet, but I'm thinking about it just because, well, for sites like that, you know, they are, although they have memberships, they are pretty much financed by advertising. Maybe we ought to do that. Financed by advertising. All right. Anybody else? Comments? Yes, of course. We have Sukkot coming up. Yes.
All right. Historical clue sleuth hounds. The book I am working on that I will try to present next. And I apologize. I am a full-time minister, but I am also full-time everything else too. Is Moses and Akhenaten, Brothers in Alms, ALMS, by Ted Lukes, Loukes. It's very interesting, and it sort of dovetails to the one I just did. It's good. If anybody would like to read it and discuss it as well, or give me some counterpoint.
Yes, well, I wanted to say that we are running our Caesar Aura book scanner like crazy now. Lee's been at it about every day, and I have that book.
Nice.
And it's really good, and it's academic, yet at the same time it's easy to read. So we have the book by Kirill Aldred, Akhenaten. You know, he's the main guy on Akhenaten. That is already scanned in, and we have all kinds of books. At least 1,000. No, we got at least 1,100 books right now scanned in. So if you are interested in checking out the library, I'm just waiting to get my stuff migrated. I'm working on that right now, but you can find good stuff. And Aldred is one of those guys that helped to translate the Amarna letters as well. So there are lots of portions from the Amarna letters in there. Sorry to interrupt.
No, I'm sorry. I was just trying to give a little rally cry to everybody. Hey, who's listening? Come on, we value everyone's opinion, and you guys are all scholarly, or you wouldn't be here. Your opinion is valid. Bring it on. Read something. Come on and talk. It's not that scary or hard. You can leave your picture off.
Yeah. Read something is fine. Look, I'm supposed to be just a facilitator here. I was only the janitor here.
Well, I'll tell you what, after a couple more weeks of discussion, I'd like to try to narrow it down if we can and do a provisional timeline of when these people may have appeared on and off the scene, and you could do it in several lines. You could do it, you know, Joseph, Moses, however, and we can all figure out what is, like I said, the most probable truth.
Like comparisons, you could put
Yes. Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, that would be really helpful.
It would be really cool if we could get a little help.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Marcille wanted to start this group, but I haven't seen her yet. I don't know that she even knows about it, but she would be one that could do that or help with that for sure.
Absolutely.
And she knows a lot about it, but we're missing her input. And I'll tell you somebody else that knows a lot about this, and that's Kenneth Kimmons.
Oh, yeah.
So, Kenneth,
Yes.
stand up.
Have y'all heard of Jane Vine?
Jane Vine, V-I-N-E.
Mm-hmm.
I'll look her up right now.
I'm reading a paper she put together. She's concluded that Moses was Akhenaten's brother. And
The older brother?
well, I'm just getting started
Yeah.
on it,
Okay.
and I'm starting to take notes. She is very thorough and historic, and it is a lot of information.
I'm looking for her. There's several of them. Wait a minute. You spell her name V-I-N-E?
Yes.
Does she have a book? Did you say the title?
I would have to look it up. I got it downloaded. I can post it on
Yeah.
Facebook.
Oh, yeah. Okay, we can get that next time. I'm just looking a little more. Well, I don't see her name specifically, but when I put her name in, I'm sure getting a lot of references to that time period.
Yeah, she goes a lot into DNA and links that with historical facts and stuff like that. So like I say, I'm just getting started on it, but there's a lot there. It's like, I think 370 pages. So
Well, that would be worth going out to Amazon and seeing if I could find something by her.
Yeah.
We're really interested in the DNA thing.
Yeah, and
Is the
I'll
name
try to-
Akhenaten in her book title?
yes.
All right.
Let me see if I
I'm not
can get to it
finding
right
her
quick.
yet.
I'm sorry, I said Akhenaten's brother. It's the title of it's Moses, son of Akhenaten.
Okay.
So she thinks it's his son instead of brother.
That's fascinating. I
Mm.
gotta find that book. That's awesome.
Will that
Her
be
name-
King Tut? He had one son, I think, and 6 daughters.
Well, he had a second wife who was supposedly wife in name only. Remember that? She was from a foreign country.
Right,
Yeah, well,
and
some sources say that, and then the source we looked at last week said that he had only one wife
Right.
the whole time.
well, she goes into the second wife is where, and she goes to the Amarna letters, and there's a reference in there. I can't. It's another king that he's greeting Akhenaten and mentions his wife, daughters, and sons, and she picks up on that and you know ties it back in that way.
No, I'm not finding that at all. Let me just look on Google.
Her name is Jane Margaret Vine, V-I-N-E.
Cool. Where did you find the book? Brother Kenneth?
I just was doing Google searches and it
There it
come
is.
up.
Oh, listen, this is on PDF.
Ooh, share, share, share.
Let me take a look. It appears to be.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the way I have it in a PDF.
It's a dissertation. Yes. It's for her requirements, her master's thesis. Yeah, here
Nice.
it is. Let me give you a link. I just love it when they're in PDF. ZA, South Africa. There you have it.
Thank you.
Let me
Thank
send
you,
this
Kenneth.
thing. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Ken.
Uh,
Okay.
I'll which y'all can look at it, but I'll try to put some stuff together, some more stuff out of it, and we can, look at it. Because she gets really deep in the
Oh,
DNA
yeah.
and tying them back, how they could have been related and the different ones and who they possibly could have been. There's a whole lot of that in there.
Lots of pictures, lots of notes, lots of tables. Here's oh, it's right down your alley, Allison. There's genealogy in here.
Ooh, cool. This is awesome. This is what I envisioned. Everybody getting together and thank you for being our janitor and moderator, Jackson, but for everyone else to, share what they learn. That's how you increase in your knowledge is everyone puts into it,
Well, let me show you the family tree real quick before we go.
Yeah, and I think she ties the second wife back to Yuya as well. Which
Ooh,
a lot.
That's cool.
Yeah, a lot think that he's Joseph, and that would tie them to the Hebrews if that was so.
So we'll get down to the bottom. Amenophis the third, Smenkare, Tutmos, Akhenaten here. I have a hard time reading these. Is this like Amenophis the third? Are these like people he married? Because
Usually it's children of the same marriage of the upward link, and then laterally it's people they marry and then their offspring. So I don't know, but that varies. That's really interesting, man. I wish I could get a screenshot of that.
Yuya's up here.
Yeah, and Tuya or Tia, Amen and I and T.
That makes some sense, really.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Wow, this is good.
Yeah, Ty or Queen T, she's the definite link.
Neat.
She's the what?
The link, the I guess the mother. Well, no, let's see. She was the grandmother. I don't know. I better research it some more. But I know she's definitely one of the main links.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, download it, and there you have it. Study that family tree a little bit, and we'll get together again next week. If there's nothing else for tonight, I thank you for coming. Don't forget, let's go to Sukkot. Otherwise, Bishop Urgash is going to send someone down to our house one of these times. If you have trouble paying, you can pay. You can pay it monthly till we get there. What other announcements do we have?
Just that on Sunday afternoon before our Bible study, I would like to have a Sukkot planning and updating meeting. It's just going to be an hour, and we're going to try to tie up some loose ends. We're going to talk about just what you talked about, Jack, and we're going to make sure we're going to assign some things to some people so that we can make sure that this comes off in a good way. I think it's going to be good.
Oh, yeah. If you want to teach there, let me know. And if you can think, I got to teach there. So you let me know if there's some topic that I can cover that you might be interested in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And basically, when are you going to put the schedule together, Jack? Remember, I want
soon. Real soon. As soon as I figure out what to do, I'm sure Eddie's already got his stuff.
Okay.
I don't know how you address Eddie Chumney, but
Eddie.
All right. His Holiness Eddie Chumney.
Oh my goodness!
What days is he going to be there? Because that might be a really good thing to know, so that people who have different calendar dates might want to come and see him.
He'll be there, I think, 4 days.
Which ones?
He's got to go to Oklahoma. I'll have to go back and look again. He told me what days he's available.
Sweet.
He's going right straight from there to OK. Yeah, he's very deep, and he's very entertaining, especially if you can get him to do the horror.
Get him to do the ants in your pants dance.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
That's when I first met him.
I don't know if he's still got some fat on him or not, but he was pretty chubby last time I saw him. It was about 10 years ago, I guess. And he did that dance, and he just didn't stop till he was in a sweat. It was great.
Exactly.
Entertainment.
Well, we're going to meet together Sunday, and we're going to tie up some loose ends. And once we do that, I think we'll be on a good footing. So, and don't forget the Bible study. We're in the Didache.
Right. Louisette, if you want to come, you let me know.
Exactly.
We'll get you there. All right. Thank you all. Love you. Appreciate your faithfulness. See you next time.